property you want to buy. So when you arrange your mortgage and bring out whatever it is in that help to buy ISA, and add it to the mortgage you've been able to arrange, you should be able to pay for that property. And the government scheme, the government bonus will only be paid when you are ready to complete on the property. Your solicitor will now apply for that government bonus, and the government will now transfer that money to your solicitor's account towards the payment of that property. So the money doesn't appear in your account as you are saving. Yeah? Okay. But the money is there somewhere.
So when you are going
to... so that you don't go and take the money and go and marry another wife in Africa. Yeah? So when you have 1,600 in the account, you know that money is basically £2,000. But it's not reflecting as £2,000 in the account. So it's until you are ready to buy the property and you are at the point where you want to complete. And that's why they said you cannot use it for exchange deposit as well. So associated costs like solicitors and mortgage brokers and your exchange deposits have to come out of your pockets. But the moment you are ready to to complete, your solicitor will apply for that bonus from the government, and then they will look at your account. The maximum bonus is £3,000. So even if you have £20,000 in the account, the government will give you £3,000 because that's the maximum bonus that you're entitled to. Yeah, Mr. Clare? You had your hands up, yeah? Okay.
So if I understand, if you use the help to buy ISA to own a property, there is absolutely no way you can own another property again. Or if there is any way, if you can show that us.
Okay. Nothing stops you from owning another property, but the moment you own another property, you have to refund that bonus to the government.
Oh.
Yeah, because then you're no longer in the position, you're no longer in the category of people they are looking to help. So because the next property you're going to own is going to be a buy-to-let. So if you're rich enough to own a buy-to-let, you don't need the bonus. Yeah, and to own a buy-to-let, you need at least 25% deposits.
Yeah, I just want to ask the same thing as this. For instance, okay, government has helped you, this ASA help to buy. And you have bought a house, and maybe after 3 years, you do a remortgage, and then you buy another property. You have to pay government back.
Yes.
That is not good.
Jeff.
Yeah, if you remortgage and you buy another property, you are a property investor now. You're a landlord. You're a property investor. So you're a rich boy. You don't need a government bonus.
But what's the time limit then? That you don't need to pay back the money?
As long as you don't own another property. As long as you don't own another property. The idea is to help people get onto the property ladder. It's not really to finance people's property investments. So if you're no longer in that category, there are other people who need the money. But basically, I think, the last bonus claim will be by 2030. So I would imagine that after 2030, the scheme, is already out of the way. After that, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the policy is going to be, but at least we know that from now till 2030, if you own another property, you pay the government back. After that, the policy might change, or they might come up with another scheme, or we don't know. But at least from now to 2030, we know you cannot own another property if you have used help to buy ISA scheme. Yeah. So, okay. All right. So we're going to shared ownership. Shared ownership are used for people who cannot afford to buy 100% of their own home. So basically, you can buy a share of the property and then pay the remaining share in rent. Yeah, so you can own between 25 to 75% share of the property and pay rent on the remaining proportion. And then as you live in that property, you can buy more shares of the property. If you bought 25% share of the property, as time goes on, your finances improve, you can apply to buy another 25% share of the property until you own 100% share of the property. And whatever proportion you do not own, you pay rent on that proportion that you do not own. So it's available for households with income. So the key word here now is households. Yeah, so available for households with income of £80,000 or less if you're outside of London, or £90,000 or less if you're in London. It's available to first-time buyers. It's also available to previous homeowners who can no longer afford to buy now, or an existing shared owner looking to move. So if you've owned a house previously and now you can no longer afford to buy, you can use the shared ownership scheme to get back on the property ladder. So for somebody who was asking if you owned a property before, the shared ownership scheme, you're eligible to use that. It can be used to purchase new builds or existing properties through resale programs from housing associations. So basically, shared ownerships are very commonly made available by housing associations. And shared ownership properties are always leasehold. They are not freeholds. Next slide, please. There is also a shared ownership program or scheme for people with disabilities. And there's also a shared ownership scheme for older people. If you need more information on that, talk to me later on because we're running very much short of time. Next slide, please. Now, this is the one I really wanted to spend time on, but because we are short of time, I will just do my best. That's the one you were talking about. So this is another help to buy scheme. It's called the equity loan scheme, help to buy equity loan scheme. Now, this is how it works. The government lends you 20% of the value of your new build property. You put down 5% deposit and get a mortgage on the remaining 75%. The key word in this scheme is equity loan. So what it means is that the government owns 20% equity in your property. So they lend you 20% of the value of the property. You put down 5%. And then the remaining 75% you get a mortgage on that. And when somebody owns a part of your property or equity in your property, it means as your property value appreciates, as the property appreciates in value, the owner of that equity has a share in the appreciation. So if you bought a house for 200,000 and after 5 years the house is worth 240,000, 20% of that equity on that property belongs to whoever has helped you buy the property. So if you sell that house, whatever equity is, you have to pay the person, whoever helped you buy that property, 20% of the value of that house. I'm going to come to that. I'll make it clear to you. So it's only available for new builds. So you can actually put down 5% deposit. But bear in mind that 5% deposit, you still have to meet the criteria for the 75% mortgage. So that it doesn't mean that if the property is 200,000, you have 5%, 10,000 pounds, you put it down, government puts down 20%, which is 40,000 pounds, that's 50,000 pounds, then automatically you qualify for 150,000 pounds. No. Every other criteria for mortgage application has to be in place for the balance. It's only available for new builds. The help to buy equity loan scheme is only available for new builds. So no second-hand property on that. It's available to all home buyers, not just first-time buyers. Yeah? So this is not just first-time buyers, it's available to all home buyers. and all home buyers who have deposit constraints, but otherwise can afford a mortgage for a new build. Some people, they just don't have the deposits, but their income can carry the mortgage. So whether you are a first-time buyer or you are a home buyer, but not an investor, yeah, but you cannot afford to you cannot afford the deposits, but your income, you have a very good job or you have a very good income, but the deposits, you haven't saved it up. They are helping you to just put down 5% deposit and the government will come up with 20%. Now this scheme has been available since 2013, but it's been extended till 2021. It was extended in 2015, so we still have it up to 2021. Now, the maximum full purchase price for any property for London and outside of London for new homes is £600,000. That's the maximum purchase price for any property you want to use the equity loan scheme for, whether it's in London or outside of London. There is no interest payable on the government loan for the first 5 years. So that 20% that the government has given to you, you're not paying interest on it for the first 5 years. But after the 5 years, in the 6th year, you start paying 1.75% in interest to the government. And that interest increases every year by the retail price index. So it's retail price index plus 1%. That's the indices they use to calculate how much interest you're meant to pay to the government every year. So when you are using this scheme, bear in mind or just assume that your interest payments will be increasing every year. The idea is basically to motivate you to pay off that loan as early as possible, so you don't sit on it. No interest payable to the government for the first 5 years. The government takes a second legal charge over your home for the 20% equity loan. So it's like a second loan you've taken. The government will take a second charge on your property once you are part of this scheme. The first-time buyers in London can get up to 40% loan equity loan scheme. So for properties in London, you can get up to 40% of government support if the property is inside London. Outside of London is 20%. The maximum amount you can borrow on that scheme is £120,000 for properties outside of London and £240,000 for London house buyers. There is no minimum amount. So the maximum you can borrow on this scheme is £120,000 if it's outside of London and £240,000 for London house buyers. Next slide, please. So this loan that the government has given to you, the 20%, is repayable after 25 years or upon the sale of the property. So that 20% is repayable after 25 years or upon the sale of that property. Whenever you sell that property, you repay the 20%. Now, that 20%, bear in mind that what you are paying to the government is 20% of the house value. That's what you're paying them back. So if you sold that house, if the house price was £200,000 and the government gave you £40,000, 20% of it to help in buying that house, and you sell the house 6 years later for £240,000, what you are paying to the government is £48,000, which is 20% of the sale price of that house. Yeah, so that's how you pay it. The interest you are paying to the government does not reduce the loan amount. That 1.75% you're paying to the government does not reduce the loan amount. So the 40,000 that the government loaned you is still there. The only time you repay it is after 25 years, and that 25 years they will look at the value of the property after 25 years, and you pay them 20% of it at the time, even if you haven't sold the house. They will calculate the value of that property, and then you give them 20% of it. So they use an independent valuer to come and value the property. Or if you sell the house before the 25 years, you pay them 20% of the sale value of the property. So that's why when the interest increases every year, what they're trying to encourage you to do is but then the other thing you can also do, you can repay the loan early by paying a minimum. You can pay it in bits. For example, if you want to pay them 10% of the value of the house, say after year 6, you can pay them 10% of the value of the house, so you have only 10% left to pay them. Before the 25 years, you can decide to pay them 10% again. You don't have to sell the house. All you have to do is you want to repay it, you contact them, I want to repay 10%. They will send a valuer to value the property. And based on the valuation, you pay them 10%. That's the minimum you can repay back at a time, 10% of it. Yeah, and then when you think you want to repay again, you call them again, I want to pay the remaining 10%, then you can repay it. Now, if you want to remortgage the property to repay that loan, the government can authorize that. It's basically by Homes England, that's the name of the company, it's called Home England. Home England can authorize remortgage of that property if the purpose of that remortgage is towards repayment of parts of that 20%. They can authorize it. So basically, you cannot remortgage that property without the consent of Home England. You cannot extend or improve on that property without the consent of Home England. So, because they've got 20% equity in the property, they need to know what is happening, if you're going to change the value of that property. So you'll be paying £1 every month as management fee. Yeah, on that. The management fee and interest does not reduce the capital. Like I